plumber wrote out a 91-year-old grandmother's bill and brought her and her granddaughter to tears. They were hoping for something else. Hi friends, we are probably already used to hearing that many rich people do good deeds and help those who really need it. And there are quite a lot of such stories on our channel, and one way or another, you can't help but think that good is the lot of the rich people. An ordinary person like you and me just can't afford it. But as our next story shows, real heroes don't wear capes and don't even shout about it to the world. They just do their job quietly and don't wait for an ovation from the public. But one way or another, no matter how much they want to keep quiet about it, sooner or later their stories become public, and in a matter of days can get viral and melt the hearts of millions of people around the world. 52-year-old James Anderson is originally from Liverpool. He used to work as a regular garbage collector, but as the years passed, he realized that the profession he was engaged in was not what he wanted to devote his entire life to, and so he learned to be a plumber, and by the way, he liked it. To see how water runs through pipes and gives good to people as if blood runs through the veins, giving life to many organisms. In addition, James is a wonderful family man who has 5 children, and none of them ever felt that they were deprived of attention. Perhaps the father's instinct played an important role in this story. One day, James received a phone call. On the wire was a young girl who asked the plumber to help her grandmother because winter was coming, and the old woman in a private house had huge problems. All her plumbing was very old and has not been changed in the last 40 years. Our hero came to the 91-year-old pensioner from Lancashire, suffering from leukemia, seeing a terrible picture and realizing that in this state of the house, she will not survive the winter. And also realizing the fact that without hot water in the winter, the grandmother will freeze. James immediately got to work. 4 days spent at the new facility from morning to evening is the minimum that James completed. In addition, the man constantly drove off somewhere in his car and returned back with new pipes and other plumbing. The amount of work that was performed was enormous. A huge number of old components were replaced and new plumbing was installed. The grandmother was always nervous because she understood that all the work done would be very expensive and only periodically called her granddaughter and told her what stage everything was going. Kristen Rowland, granddaughter of the 91-year-old woman, was also in touch with James all the time asking for the cost of repairs, wondering how much it would cost them, but the plumber in turn only replied, "Don't worry, it will cost you less than you think." And of course, as I think many people understand, such a vague answer made both women nervous. After all, unfortunately, it often happens that the amount announced at the end can be shocking, and especially when it comes to 2 women who had to get the repair job. And by the way, this is exactly what happened. When all the work was done, James wrote the grandmother a check and began to collect his things. A lonely pensioner with trembling hands took a piece of paper and expected to see the amount with at least 3 zeros and even more. She was shocked by what she saw, and after a few minutes, tears began to drop down her cheeks, after which she immediately called her granddaughter Kristen. As it turned out, the check written by James for the incredible work, purchase of materials, and a few days looked like this. It simply said, "No payment from a 91-year-old woman under any circumstances. We will be available 24 hours a day to help and provide maximum comfort." After that, he looked into the eyes of the confused old woman and said with a smile, "Now you can call your granddaughter and tell her not to worry about anything." Then he said goodbye to the grandmother calmly, as if nothing had happened, got into his car, and drove away. Kristen arrived at her grandmother's house and did not find our hero. She stared at the receipt for a long time and couldn't understand what was happening. She called James and asked if everything was alright and what it was, and heard the answer that he was happy to help them, and their payment was his smile and warmth in the old woman's house. And most likely, no one would have found out about this act of kindness of the plumber if Kristen had not published an unusual check on the social networks. The paper displayed expensive work that not everyone can afford, but the amount of payment was 0. As expected, the post went viral on the internet, and when a large number of people saw it, then the whole truth about James came out. It turned out that for several years he had been helping all those in need for free, and as it was later established, he had helped more than 500 different families. And one of the most frightening things was that by helping others, he got into debt for more than 9,000 euros. When the father of 5 was found by journalists, he was very surprised by such attention to his character, and then said that he certainly did not do anything heroic. He also added that he is happy that he can help people and is not going to stop there. When journalists began to ask James more about what prompted him to do such things, he said that in 2017, he saw how disrespectfully his colleague communicates with elderly clients. Of course, this was extremely unpleasant for him, because the pensioner is not to blame for knowing nothing. That is why he has to hire professionals, but most of all, he remembered the words of a former colleague who said that such a client is better than any lottery because he does not understand anything and will pay any amount announced. It was then that James decided that he would never allow such a thing to happen. But friends, if you think that this is the end of the story, then well, it's not. After the check of £0 was published online, James became very famous. Many people expressed their admiration and support for him. It all started with the fact that a local plumbing store, James began to get goods at cost, and the people in the network even organized a fundraiser on the crowdfunding site, where just a few days later, the amount of $65,000 was collected. 1,624 people gave money to a plumber who got into debt helping people those in need. James himself did not get conceited after that. On the contrary, with all the money he received, he even created a whole project to help those in need, and many colleagues decided to support him. As the hero himself says, if each of us is at least a little kinder to each other, then we can all make this world much better. No amount of money can buy a human relationship. This is the story of a common plumber who became a hero for the whole of Britain, and it once again proves to all of us that each of us is capable of more. Friends, how do you view such an act of the man? Be sure to write your opinion in the comments. But for today, that's all. Be sure to like the video, and we'll see you soon.